Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our live certification workshop with our facilitator, the amazing Tanya Boyd. Tanya is the PMI Baton Rouge Chapter President and a friend of mine, and she is going to walk us through the CAPM and the PMP certification that is offered from the Project Management Institute. So Tanya, just in order to save as much time as we can for the actual presentation, you can go ahead.
All right. So, getting started. Hi, my name is Tanya Boyd. Thank you for being here tonight. So y'all want to put yourselves on camera too or not? Either way is comfortable. So a little bit about my backstory and even why I'm here tonight. So outside of what's on this slide, Andrea and I first became connected last year. She had joined up with one of my virtual presentations that I had for the chapter when Lee Lambert was presenting for us. And ever since then, Andrea's been joining our meetings and we've been conversating. She's actually been a speaker for our chapter as well, virtually. And her and I were talking one day and she was asking if I knew anybody that could present on the application process and getting through for the CAPM and PMP. And I offered and I said, okay, I'd like to try and do this. So that's kind of how we came about tonight. So a bit of my backstory. I worked in disaster recovery, healthcare, banking, and IT. So I've had a bit of a diverse blend when it comes to my career. Became a member of PMI in 2014. How I first found out about PMI was when I was working in disaster recovery. Somebody that was a contractor there told me that I should learn about the certification and that I was a project manager. So I kind of identify as the accidental project manager, that it took somebody else to lead me to it. So on his urging, I started studying for things. And I just realized this. I have a typo on my own thing. I actually earned the PMP in 2014, not in 2016. Sorry about that. And additionally, I earned the PMI-ACP, which is an Agile certification, in 2020. So chapter membership. I became a member of the chapter in 2014, and I joined the leadership team in 2017. So in my time in leadership, I've served in professional development, communications, and in finance, and I'm currently in my second year as president of the organization. My organization's got about 550 people. Some of them are made up from local members, and after the pandemic, we've also got a lot of virtual members as well. So just things about me. I love to spark creative thinking. Also, hobbies include kayaking, karaoke, and cooking. Andrea knows this because she's connected with me on LinkedIn. A lot of times I'll share creative photography and nature photography. And then I believe in theme parties, having a good time, making project management as fun as I possibly can, and just using humor to connect with people. Okay, so the professional disclaimer. While I am a volunteer with PMI, I am not a paid employee of PMI, the organization. So the views that I express here are going to be my own and independent. Everything I cover is going to be based on my research. That's on PMI.org, on the internet. Some of this I actually will cop to the fact that I use ChatGPT for some idea generation on different things as well. And so this material is being shared for informational purposes, but it's definitely recommended if you're looking to apply to sit for either the CAPM or the PMP certification. It is very important to visit PMI.org for the most up-to-date information. And as we get through this, you'll see why too. I mean, they've got changes coming on the CAPM as soon as July. So that's definitely the source that you want to visit to get up-to-date information. Just a quick question. Are there any of you here that have the CAPM or the PMP currently? Are y'all all looking at the process and kind of at the stage gate of starting to try and figure out how to apply for it?
If I were to consider one, I would consider the ACP as a starting one.
Okay. Okay. So I can actually connect with you offline a little bit more about that. I didn't cover that explicitly in this presentation, but if we've got time, I can share what I know about it with you and kind of give you some guidance on that.
Sure, not a problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
You're
Tanya,
welcome.
before you move on, I saw Rashad had his hand raised. I don't know what he was
Okay.
raising it for, Rashad?
Really, I was just answering her question. Yeah, I'm here I'm starting out. I know I did project management as a minor back in college, and that's been a while. So I know the industry and the standard has changed a bit. So what I'm here for is just to get the knowledge on where to start from again, the best training classes in school and booklets to take up.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you for being here. So let me see. Okay, so this is just a bit about project management as the national organization. So basically what it is, it's a global nonprofit organization that's dedicated to advancing the field of project management. You know, they pride themselves on developing the standards for best practices. They very heavily promote professional development and also a wide variety of certification programs. So it was founded in Pennsylvania in 1969. Currently, there's about 650,000 members. I think the last time I looked at how many PMPs they have, it's either 1.2 or 1.3. That number is very, very fluid because it's gained a lot of traction in the past couple of years. And on local chapters, there's over 300 chapters that are located in 200 different countries. So that's just very, very important to keep in mind. It is a very globalized organization. And I can say that being part of it, it's led to connections with people from all over, which has been a really great learning experience just to learn from everybody else. Like I mentioned, there's a wide array of project management certifications. So some of the benefits of a national PMI membership: you get discounts on their certification, you get the access to global network of professionals, discounts to virtual and in-person educational events. Like, for an example, they just had their virtual series on June 15th. And if somebody was a member, it would have been free. I think for guests, it was about $80. They do have access to a lot of the different project management tools and templates. So when you get asked in your jobs to create spreadsheets and things of that nature, you've got it a little bit more accessible at your fingertips. And then one of the biggest perks is just they've got free download of the different study guides and test prep material. And I know, Rashad, you asked about, just different training courses and things of that nature. I'm going to be getting to that in here as well. But just even this free download of study guides, they've got the PMBOK, the 7th edition is free to download, the business analysis guide, the agile guide, all of that is free with your membership. And then, of course, just helping to find job opportunities and expand your contacts. Then just the benefits of joining a local chapter. Just kind of connect with your local community, network and build skills. You have opportunities to volunteer and make an impact. Access to both in-person and virtual meetings. Now, that's going to depend from chapter to chapter. For instance, our chapter had never done a virtual meeting before the pandemic. Now we're doing both in-person and virtual, so we host about 25 events a year. And then their fees are typically $30 to $60, and you can belong to several chapters. Then just briefly, the cost of membership for National PMI is $139 a year. I think there's a $10 fee to register. And in order to join a local chapter, you must be a member of National Those fees are separate. If any of y'all are students and you're in a degree earning program, it's important to note that they do have a different tier of membership. That's only $32 a year for global. And then one other point is local dues are paid at the same time as membership renews. Okay, so getting a little bit more into the certifications themselves. This slide is here just to show you kind of a variety of different certifications that they've got. What we're going to be focusing on tonight is the CAPM, or Certified Associate in Project Management, and then the PMP, which is Project Management Professional. The biggest difference between these two, because they both cover a very similar amount of information, is just more the education level and the experience that you've had with project management. But there's some of these slides as we go throughout here, you'll notice are kind of synced up because it, like I said, it kind of applies to both. Okay, so before we jump into that, and I just wanted to point this out too. When I first got into project management, I really thought that it was mainly for people in technology and engineers, because locally that was what I was seeing. I definitely want everybody on the phone to realize that there's a much more diverse spectrum of industries that are looking for project managers, and that number is only expected to go up as the demand increases. Okay, so I think we've got about 2 or 3 more slides before we deep dive into the certifications and what y'all came for tonight. But the value of certifications, it just provides industry recognition. It does allow for a higher salary potential. It adds value to the resume. There's a lot of, and I put applicant tracking system in here because I'm seeing more and more job descriptions for project managers that require a PMP. Important to realize on these applicant tracking systems, or ATS, none of us can account for how they're configured at different industries, but it's one of those screening tools that most places, however they've got it configured, you have to meet a certain criteria or your resume may or may not ever get seen by human eyes. You know, so just having that acronym on there, having project management on there could be something to help you get through the gate when others don't. You know, and it also helps you to develop and enhance your skills. Continuing education is a requirement of maintaining your certification after you earn it. So it's almost a built-in catch system to make sure that you're using different ways to advance yourself professionally. Okay, so understanding the eligibility requirements and then choosing your certification path. So first we'll talk about the CAPM. Now, as we go through this, I'd kind of like to, after I finish reviewing these, hear a little bit from each of you, which one or which path you think that you would be on. So the CAPM would require about 1,500 hours of work, and then 23 hours of training, which is from the education provider. Education is a high school diploma. And then as you can see, there's going to be a different cost for this. Members is $225, non-members is $300. This test time, go back. Hold on. This test time is about 3 hours and 150 multiple choice. So the PMP, there's 2 different levels to qualify. If you've got a degree, you need about 4,500 hours or close to 3 years experience to be able to document. If you don't have a degree, it would be closer to 5 years or 7,500 hours. On this one, you would need 35 hours from a trainer rather than just the 23. And then your exam cost is a little bit different, and it's got more tests and more time. From everything I've read, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit more later, one of the biggest differences between these exams is that the CAPM kind of tests you more on the terminology and the definitions. I mean, it covers different things like risk management, scope management, all of that. But the biggest difference is that the PMP is going to test you more on situational scenarios. So it's going to ask you to apply your knowledge in a different way within those scenarios, whereas the CAPM's a little bit more clear cut. So, okay, just stopping for a second and just kind of going around the participants. Who's going for the PMP and who would be more interested in the CAPM just based on your eligibility requirements? Okay.
Well, because I'm starting fresh out, I want to get a fresh understanding. I would just start out with the CAPM, since you say that's more terminology and definitions. So to get a good baseline of everything again, I would just start out with the CAPM.
Okay. So now let me ask you a question, Rashad. How many years experience do you have working in project management, or are you working in project management right now?
No, currently not in project management. I'm in IT.
Okay. Okay. So, well, all right. So IT, what kind of role do you do in IT?
I am lead system engineer in virtualization and infrastructure.
So you are leading projects though, correct? Even though you don't have the title? How
That's
long?
correct.
Okay. So how long have you led projects for?
For about 4 or 5 years. So every time you have a new platform, it's kind of a new project that I deal with vendors and deal with local resources here. So in a sense, you could say I'm pretty much like a non-titled project manager.
That's important to note. And I will tell you why. So I've mentioned that a lot of the information and the study information is the same, but it really is driven off of your experience. So as I go through this, I mean, I can understand wanting to start with the CAPM first as a baseline, but think about it this way too. If your experience would actually qualify, you may want to go for the PMP. And again, that winds up being a personal decision for the people that are choosing their own journey. But what I wanted to stress there is, even though you don't currently have the title of project manager, you don't have to. You know, as a lead systems engineer, you are leading projects. You know, so just when each of you think about your experience in the workforce, think of it in those terms. Because when I did my application for the PMP, I had never had the title of manager. I had never had the title of project manager. I was working on a very large scale disaster recovery effort after Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana. And that project was over 8 years, and it had a lot of different phases to it. And it literally did take somebody else helping me understand that my experience actually did translate to project management. So, and as we go through, there's more slides that go more into detail on that.
Tanya, I have a question.
Sure.
One thing, what if you're in product management? Because in my case, I'm more dedicated to the agile side of things. So can it be justified or converted to?
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Even a product, even though you're producing something that at the end is a product and might be tangible, or even if it's not tangible, it's a product in a software system, it is still a project to get to the point where you complete that product to be able to deliver to the client. And I know that project management, a lot of times it can get confusing just with all of the shift in terminology, especially the past couple of years, waterfall, agile, hybrid, all of that. And I know Andrea may have something to say about this at the end, but I feel like when people talk about agile to me is understanding that there are a lot of different ways to get the job done. There's a lot of different tools. There's a lot of different ways of working. Andrea is very big into Kanban, you know, the board where you move things across and you quantify what's being done. But there's multiple offshoots, Scrum, Lean programming, things of that nature that all fall under the Agile hood. But to me, it's really just working within your organization's culture and figuring out what is going to be the right way to get the job done, what's going to be the right way to communicate with the client. Because as I've moved through different industries, there's no way I could get every single organization to adapt all of Agile's terminology, but it's kind of picking and choosing, okay, does this make sense? Would this work for you? So I hope that helps. But yes, I actually do think product management is very, very, very similar to project management too. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So,
and out of curiosity, you said you worked in disaster recovery for Katrina. Was it with the DRS CGI team?
It was actually somebody in CGI that was I didn't work directly with CGI, but I live in Lafayette now. So CGI has a very big presence here. And it was somebody on the CGI team that was the motivator. And that was the person that pulled me aside to say, hey, you need to do this. So
okay.
Where are you based out of?
I'm based in Puerto Rico. The thing is that I joined the CGI team that is dealing with disaster recovery efforts after Hurricanes Irma and Maria. So that's why I'm asking.
I will have to connect with you offline and even see, because I knew some people that went out to Puerto Rico, and what has been very interesting is disaster recovery as a whole was very heavily influenced by that project that happened in Louisiana. Was like the one that kind of built up the standards. And so over the years, I got out of disaster recovery in 2014. I wound up going to Department of Revenue, healthcare, and that was really where the journey began. But yeah, I knew people that were in Puerto Rico, so that's really cool to hear. So yeah. So for the application process, and this is actually going to be very similar for both of them. First, it's just gathering your information. So as we go through this, I'll try to do my best to help y'all understand the process for each one of them. But it would be gathering your information, understanding what you'd be submitting on that application and how to fill it out, documenting the education provider. So that's going to be whether you took a Udemy course or whether you went to a boot camp or whether you used an authorized training provider. And then documenting your work experience, which that's a whole exercise in itself on how to frame your work experience and how to translate that on the application that's going to be reviewed by people at PMI. Then you review and submit. The time keeps changing on this. Like if I go online, it tells me about 5 to 8 days. I don't think that's accurate because I know people that have submitted that haven't heard back. Not in control of that process, but once you do hear back, and if you're approved, that would be the point that you would schedule the exam and pay for it. You know, so I wanted to point that out because in order to even see if you qualify for either one of these, you'd have to figure out doing the education provider and getting those credit hours, because you have to have that bundled up to even be able to submit the application. And then another point, you don't have to pay at the front. You just, once you review and submit it, if it's accepted, at that point is when you pull out the credit card or the PayPal and you pay. Once you pay for it, or actually once you're approved, you've got a year to take the test. And I've known some people, they get approved and then life happens, things happen, and they don't they don't schedule it within the year, they have to go back through the reapplication process. So it's kind of important to know that once you get here and you're ready to do that, be able to do it and finish it within the year. So, okay, so this is my information overload. That was a lot, and it's really just the beginning. So just create an action plan for your application. You know, and what I find very useful with project management is if I use project management, like the basics of it, and I apply it to different things that I'm doing. So even look at, all right, I'm interested in this. I think I want to get started. I know I need to pick an education provider. I know I need to think about how to frame my experience, not just from a resume, but how I'd put it on this application. So create a plan for that. So this I kind of did for Andrea with her Kanban, you know, but it's like, all right, you have an idea. My idea is I want to advance my career. Well, how do I do that? First thing is what you're doing. You're taking that step to even join this, to kind of research, to hear a little bit more. The next thing to do is, okay, I need to get certified. In order to do that, I've got to take some sort of training from some sort of education provider and become eligible. So you've applied. Next thing is to carve out time to study. People ask me all the time, and I'm used to answering it on the PMP. I'm not used to answering on the CAPM, to be honest with you. But people tend to ask me a lot, what's an adequate time frame? How long should I take? You know, and over my years, I've seen people come on LinkedIn and say, study for a week, pass it in a week. I'm never going to give you that advice. I think it's an individualized approach. It depends upon how you study, how you learn, what your familiarity is. I took about 6 months, but that was me personally. You know, and when I was working in disaster recovery, while I was doing projects, I wasn't using the terminology. You know, so I had to learn what the framework, what the terminology was. So I would really caution anybody 3 to 6 months. And that's if you can devote the time to studying and how you absorb information and how you learn. Another huge part when you're in the study phase is the mock examinations. You can find these on PMI.org. There's a lot of the training partners or the education providers that have that built into their course. I will tell you, they've also got them on Udemy as well. You know, when I was studying for the ACP, I started studying for that in 2020. I actually bought several different test banks off of Udemy because they're priced reasonably, especially when Udemy goes on a flash sale. It's about $20. But I bought those mock exams. So while it's not the exact test question, it kind of familiarizes you with it. So, and then just review your notes throughout. Okay. So translating work experience. Find that it's best to do this by using the action verbs, you know, and so again, this is understanding like implemented, coordinated, executed, advised, monitored. You know, think of different things in your work day when you're first starting a project, whether it's an agile project or Rashad, whether it's an IT project. How do you distill that information? How do you document it? How do you break out the different pieces and parts? How do you communicate that to your team and translate the message to stakeholders? Think about all of that in your daily activities and how you would frame that. Also, when you're doing your application, you could emphasize the project outcomes and describe what the results were. If you've got any metrics to support that, that's a good thing to do as well. If you know the details of the project that you were working on, like the scope of the project, what the budget was, what the timeline was, how many different stakeholders were on the project, whether or not you were working in one division or if you worked somewhere that had like 10 or 20 different divisions because you're in what's called a matrix organization. That can help. Use the PMP terminology, and all of that information can be found, in the book, just on the terminology. And I will tell you too, even AI nowadays, if you almost Google an AI and say, give me project management terminology, it'll steer you in the right direction for that. And then focus on your different process groups, like initiating or beginning the project, what kind of things you do to plan the project, how you actually see it through, and then how you monitor the progress. And then closing is then lessons learned. And at the end of every project, it's kind of important to understand what went well, what went bad, what could you have done different, and just archive that for future reference. I want to stop right here and make sure that everything is making sense.
Well, Jackie has her hand raised. Jackie, you have a question?
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Tanya. Thank you
Hi.
so much for this information. One
You're
of the
welcome.
things that I'm thinking about as it relates to work experience, I'm not PMP. I'll probably go for the CAPM.
Okay.
That would probably be my first step. Still learning. A lot of it is still new to me, but I've learned a lot. I've come a long way. But as it relates to work experience, how do you, because most persons require about 10 years or less of experience when you're putting that on a resume. So
Right.
how do you determine what is really significant, what is not significant, what should I include? And even if I've worked in the capacity, I've been presently I'm a project manager for
Okay.
a government office.
Okay.
And I've worked for the Red Cross so hearing you talk about disaster and all that stuff just had a flashback. I worked for the Red Cross for 3 years as a PMER officer. And
Okay.
so how do I take that experience and what do I include or not include on the resume or on the work experience?
So the work experience, I almost think of resumes, and I always think of that 2-page rule. But I think a lot of resume experience could probably be translated to the PMP. I'll give you an example. And I haven't read over my application in years, and I know my ACP application was completely different from what my PMP was. But I can tell you, when I first had to do it, I struggled because, like I said, it was I didn't see myself as a project manager. It took that person at CGI believing in me and saying, hey, you're the team lead, you're leading everybody else. And I was doing more of like a quality assurance role, so basically my day-to-day job, just for context, and I'll give you an example of how I quantified it. 2005 is when Katrina hit. 2006, the end of it, was when Louisiana got the federal funds to be able to disperse. It was a company out of Fairfax, Virginia called ICF International that won the bid to administer all these funds. And I knew nothing about it. Before then, I was a mortgage originator, and I dabbled a little bit in underwriting. So I understood how to dot the I's and cross the T's and be very detail oriented. And that came in very handy for me. So when I first stepped in, the very first start of the project was, all right, we've got billions of dollars to disperse to people that lost their homes. I was put on the rental side of things. So we had to create an application because the money, we had to have thresholds, because even though it was an astronomical amount of money, it wasn't enough to fill the need that was out there. And so we designed the application. We had to do outreach programs. We had to talk to people. We were assigned to go to banks, talk to banks about doing loans for people that may or may not have good credit, but using the houses that were coming up as collateral. And over the years, it was like the project, you know, so that was definitely the initiating. We started it, we did the applications, we did all the outreach, we got the message out there, we had the first round. So then we've got our first round locked in. So then it was like a plan, like, okay, how do we plan the rest of this? How do we make sure these people are building to the specs that are required? What measures do we put in place? So we got that all done during the planning phase, and all of our standard operating procedures. I mean, we were writing them up as we went. I mean, because there was nothing like that that existed before. And so then the executing was kind of, it was probably about 2 years before, after it started, that the first funds were dispersed. It literally took that long because there was so much initiation, planning, making sure people understood. But once we just started dispersing the money, that was okay. You're executing. Are these people using the funds as intended? Are they renting the units to people who meet a certain income threshold? So we had to monitor that. And then later on, you know, it just naturally went through its phases, like, okay, we've dispersed this much money, we've still got to do this. So I was able to reflect back after 8 years, and it took me 8 years of experience to be able to do that. And I wish somebody had told me about this earlier, because it really could have changed things. But I was able to go, oh yeah, this was the beginning. Okay, this is where we were planning stuff. All right, this is how we executed and did what we needed to do. This is how we measured everything. And then this is how we wrap stuff up. So with that terminology, I was able to navigate. And it, you know, so it's challenging, but I can tell you too, I mean, we can all connect on LinkedIn. So if there's ever anything as y'all go through it that y'all want to send and say, how does this look? Am I framing it all right? I can do my best to help with that. And even in my role as PMI president, and even over the years, like, I've had people that have submitted it and they got rejected. But some of it's like engineers, you know, and they'll send me it and I'm like, well, you were talking about decommissioning and you were using terminology that was so specific to engineering. And the person that's reading it, like PMI, that diversity in careers, they see legal, they see information technology, they see information, you know, they see all industries. So framing it in project terms that can translate across, that helps. I hope that helped to some extent.
Yes, yes, a
Okay.
whole lot. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Good. You're welcome. So, all right. So that's translating the work experience. Let me check the time too. So we got, okay, 6:12. And Andrea, we're going till 7?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, choose an education provider. All right, so this is another personalized experience for people. What works for one may not work for another. You know, and now, of course, since everything's so heavy virtual, there's a lot more virtual options than what they used to be. So just the basics in choosing it. Just know that PMI maintains a list of approved education providers. Before 2019, there was something called REPs, or Registered Education Providers. PMI will still accept these. So I point that out because some of the instructors on Udemy's are REPs, but not ATPs. Still fine. Class format. This is really up to you, whether you want to do a classroom training, online courses, or self-directed study. In terms of cost, classroom training is typically the boot camps in person. They're going to be more expensive. And that's going to be one of those things that you're going to be required to take off of work for like 4 days in a row. I know some people that are in the military, because the military can get it paid for through some of the military services. They opt to do the classroom training. Online courses is kind of middle of the range. Prices vary all over the place. I mean, for classroom training, I see $1,500 to $2,000. for online, I see 300, to 1,200. Self-directed study like Udemy courses, those are a lot more economical, and I almost would tell people to buy a Udemy course too, even if you're doing the other ones almost as a supplement. And that's just because it's very inexpensive. I mean, we're talking under $30, inexpensive, and you can use it as a supplement because of the way that the modules are broken out. So we cover the costs vary. For quality, the biggest thing is to look online, to look at their track record of success. If there's a video attached to it, and even with Udemy, you can kind of play it beforehand and you can decide, does this instructor speak to me? Am I bored? Are they monotone? Do I think I can absorb this? I mean, I find that all those types of things are important study considerations. And then relevance. PMI regularly updates their exam content. So for instance, I think it was 2021, like the years blur together, but 2021, I think, is when PMI came out with the PMBOK 7th edition, which is a much more condensed version than what PMBOK 6 was. And just know if you're using AI or ChatGPT, that typically goes until about 2021. So it's going to steer you to PMBOK 6. That's why I said, make sure to go to PMI.org and just understand the exam content outline. So, okay, scheduling centers and test centers. And this is kind of after you get the application approved. PMI will send you an instruction on scheduling. You can typically take it at an in-person at a Pearson VUE testing center or through an online proctor. And then wherever you're located, you just want to check out your options and check availability and proximity, and then review the requirements. So I took the PMP in an online Prometric center. They're proctored, good advice to arrive 30 minutes early. They give you scheduled breaks, but you can't bring in your cell phone. Everything goes in a locker. They give you scratch pads. I wound up having to do the ACP virtually because I did that in the middle of COVID. And I was so worried about it because I was so afraid that my internet was going to go out and I was going to fail the exam because my internet went out. But again, just research this based on where you are and what your application does get approved, and make the choice that's right for you. Okay, so this is just kind of a side-by-side CAPM of high school diploma for CAPM, college degree or 7,500 for PMP, 23 training provider hours for CAPM, 35 for PMP, and that's required before you submit the application. Here's your different costs for each of them, and then just the different amount of questions and hours that you get allotted. Okay. So covering the CAPM a little bit more. This is just going to have a couple of slides because a lot of this we'll kind of cover with both this and PMP. Okay, so CAPM, the focus is really on the fundamentals of project management and the role of project managers. You really need to be familiar with the project management environment and integration management. It's going to cover a lot of your different terms and definitions like project scope, schedule, cost, quality, and resource management. You've also got project procurement, communication, stakeholder, and risk management. Now, for those of you that may have already been studying, the last day to take the exam on the current format is July 24th. So what does that mean? That means that PMI is in the middle of changing the CAPM exam. It's hard for us to quantify exactly what's on there, but they do have some information online about what new things are going to be added into the mix. So they're adding in more agile frameworks and methodologies, and then business analysis. They don't give us an exact answer on exactly one book that anybody needs to study. So the best thing that I can do is tell people that you really need to look at the PMBOK and what they've got available on that. And they do have the Agile Guide and Business Analysis. One thing for both tests is when they get the exam content, they kind of do an outline of what your percentages are going to be and where they focus their attention on things. You know, but again, this information is out on PMI.org right now. You know, they've got just the different changes that are coming to it. Okay. Project management professional. And so this kind of reiterates what I just said. I mean, then this comes directly from PMI, just saying they should be aware that the PMP exam is not written according to any single text. They don't endorse any specific review courses or resources or references, which is why, even for me, I mean, I took it a long time ago and I had studied on Simply Learn, but since then I have watched some different Udemy courses and sampled different things, but it's the wild, wild west, you know, so while I have my preferences, what works for me may not work for anybody else, you know, so I just want to make sure that y'all do your research with the providers and the study group and even connect online with people in different forums to kind of help get inputs. So I'm going to stop for a second because I'm seeing a lot of, okay. All right. Just the chats and we're closed for a second. But these are some of the books that I don't know that the 6th edition is still available on PMI.org. It is probably available still on Amazon, but I know the 7th edition and the Agile Guide are out there. And these are ones that are free to PMI members. So while you're not paying for the exam right now, if this is something that you're serious about, I would motivate you to become a PMI member. And out the gate, that would be about $139 plus a $10 fee. But it does give you access to these books. I tend to be old school. I had the downloaded formula and I also bought the book, but that's me. Okay, so preparing to take the exam. So these next 3 slides are all about exam preparation and just best practices on it. Read the exam content outline, create a dedicated study schedule, and dedicate the time to take the mock tests. This is very important too, especially like when you're first taking the mock tests and studying. I wouldn't tell you to sit the 3 or 4 hours with it. I'd tell you to sample some, see how you do very quickly. But as you're getting further into your study process, when you're maybe about a month out from when you think you're going to take the test, I would tell you on a weekend or when you have the time to simulate like it was a real life environment and take those 2 or 3 hours, block out distractions, and try to take those mock texts to just even prepare your brain for what will happen the day of the test. Join a study group, you know, whether you have access to that in person or whether it's even virtual, or if people don't have the time and are busy, even at a minimum, LinkedIn is a phenomenal resource to connect with others. They've got a lot of different groups out there and forum groups that you can join and just even chime in and read information. There's a lot of people out there that are very happy to help give advice and help others out. So, and then just remember to take notes while you're studying to help remember the concepts. Use flashcards. That was something that worked for me. I'm very literal. I had to type everything out. When I was first studying, I not only did flashcards, but I wound up doing an Excel spreadsheet where I categorized all the 10 different knowledge areas, filtered it, and I would quiz myself that way. And sometimes the act of writing it out helps it to stick in my brain, but that's me, you know, because at times I can read through something and it'll it'll go out the window, where if I'm typing out my notes, even retyping it, it sinks in different. So read the PMBOK. That material is covered on both the CAPM and the PMP. Practice the time management to ensure you can complete the exam on time. And then just reviewing the notes and study materials. And then this is more for the PMP than the CAPM, but just focus on understanding the underlying concepts rather than just memorizing it. Kind of understand situationally. The PMP is very much into the PMI mindset and doing what is right. So even pay attention to PMI, to ethics, behavior, things of that nature that will help you in understanding how to navigate through some of the questions on the test. And then these are just the different knowledge areas that are covered in it. Okay, so preparing for the day of exam, and we're going to have some time here at the end, I believe, too. So it's about 6:25. We still should have some time for a lot of questions after I go through this. So it's a good idea to get good rest. Try and relax your mind as best as possible. I know that's tough. But if you're taking it in the morning, eat like a light meal, eat something balanced, something that's not going to upset your stomach because there's only certain breaks during it. Remember to arrive early and bring 2 forms of identification. One thing that I did for the PMP, I knew it was going to be 200 questions. I sat there and I wrote out to number 200 really quickly on my scratch pad. And every time I came to one that was challenging, I'd put a little circle around the number just to like book. I mean, it'll hold it in the system, but just even a bookmark in your head and try to do kind of math. Like, am I at 80%? Am I 70%? It kind of helped me track myself. And I had to use this. If something was too hard and I was getting tripped up, I had to realize, okay, I got to move on to what's next and just circle that number that was hard. And if there's time, I got to come back to it. And it's a multiple choice question. So there's usually 4 multiple choice answers on it. Usually there's about 2 that apply. Another thing I would add to this, pay attention to double negatives. You know, the wording in it is very important. You know, there'll be 2 that are similar, but a lot of times one of them is trying to trip you up. So just relax and try to read it carefully. And then just pace yourself, stretch, take the assigned breaks as needed. And the exam results, you get it immediately. It's one of those things when you press submit, which again, before you press that submit, go back over your results, look at that piece of paper, kind of gauge if there's anything that you need to go back on. But as soon as you press that button, you'll know. Full disclosure, I did not pass the PMP on my first try. It's very disappointing to me. I had tried to do it before Valentine's Day because my gift of love was going to be learning. And I remember calling my mom and telling her, and she's like, you know, you're strong. Just get up on the horse. You can try this again. And that's exactly what I did. You know, I didn't take enough time for myself to study the first time. But if that happens to any of you, just know that it is not the end of the world. And you can try it again. In the event that happens, you have 3 times within a year of your application to retake the test. If you do pass, you find out that you're immediately certified. Best advice there, you'll get the Credly badge, post it on social media, update your resume, let your friends know, you'll inspire them, and you'll also even potentially get different job opportunities that come quicker than you've expected. Okay, and so this is just good housekeeping after you've gotten your PMP or your CAPM, is just maintaining your credentials. So the CAPM requires what is called PDUs, or professional development units. It's pretty much the same thing as a continuing education unit. You've got 3 years to do it. The PMP requires 60 PDUs. And you can do this in a variety of different ways. Organization meetings count for it, volunteering, reading, listening to podcasts or blogs, giving a presentation, and even just sharing your knowledge. If you wind up getting your project management certification and going to coffee one day with somebody who is looking to learn and becoming their mentor, you can report a PDU for that. So 1 PDU equals 1 hour. This is from a project management site. They had gone through a change on what they call the talent triangle recently. Used to be strategic, leadership, and technical. Now it's business acumen, power skills, and ways of working. Basically what this is, it's different buckets to earn your PDUs in, and the way that they've got it structured makes sure that you're diversifying your education, that you're not just reading all books on Agile or reading only books on emotional intelligence. It makes sure that you're getting the blend, so you're seeing the different sides and the different spectrums of project management. And then getting involved with volunteering for PMI. So that's just my plug. So after you've gotten in, or even before, I mean, this could be something that it is not a requirement that you have to be a PMP or a CAPM to get involved with the PMI chapter. Now, it is a requirement that you belong to PMI and belong to that chapter. But I can tell you, just the hands-on and meeting people and getting to know them, that's going to develop your professional skills in a way that you never anticipated. You're going to meet a lot of really interesting people and form friendships like Andrea and I did. You're going to advance your professional development. And then you're going to learn a lot of important lessons in leadership too. You know, volunteering isn't always, it's not always easy, but there's always a lesson in there, and it's always rewarding. And then just earn credits towards your professional certifications. So that I probably finished pretty quickly, but we've still got 30 minutes left. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I can share back on any slides too, as needed as we go through this. But I'd like to take questions, and if there's anybody that's got any particular examples on resume, I'll be happy to answer those as well.
No, I just have one question. I guess I'll reach out to Andrea on this, since she's local to where I am. Trying to find a good education provider.
Okay.
I know that we have the BRI here. They have a project management, but I think it leads you to a degree, and there may be a few others, but that would be my first step, is to find, like how you say, if you feel the instructor and they're not monotone or whatnot, because I've been in a lot of classes and the instructor, and I don't too much like virtual classes, because you manage to get distracted a lot.
Understand.
During it. So yeah, that'll be my first. I don't know if it's a question to you, because
well, if it's local too, I mean, that may make sense. It would probably be easier for Andrea to identify a local provider for that than it would be for me, honestly. I don't know. I'm trying to think too, like even on PMI's approved providers, if they've got the locality of it or not.
Well, I could answer that question, Tanya.
Okay.
To answer Rashad, PMI has one authorized training provider listed in the Bahamas, and that's a company called Project Management Solutions. I did my research on them, and I don't see where they're offering any training at this time. And also just to clarify, persons who are CAPM holders and members of PMI are authorized by PMI to teach the CAPM course without being an authorized training provider. But they do require that if you're going to teach the PMP, that you are an authorized training provider with them, and that you have their training and that you use their material. But anyone can teach the CAPM who has the CAPM certification and is a PMI member in good standing.
I didn't realize that. I knew the authorized training provider, like for instance, being a chapter leader, I wouldn't be able to be in a position to teach a course. It would be a conflict of interest with the volunteer leadership. But I didn't realize that the CAPM, that they don't have to be
Yeah.
authorized.
I
So,
just found that out. I just found that out last week because I was looking into the process to become an authorized training provider.
okay.
I just found that out last week that that's their requirement. So you don't have to be registered with them. Once you're an active member and you have that credential, you can teach that class. But you have to create your own material. They don't provide you with the material.
Right. Okay. Is there anybody that's looking at doing online training rather than in person, or? Okay, Lori. So,
Yeah, I'll be doing. Actually, I live in Lafayette, Louisiana, also.
do you? Okay.
Yeah, I work at SCP.
Yes. Okay.
In the IT department as
the
the
name looked familiar.
as the project coordinator now, and so I'm trying to work to get my. I think I'm gonna do my CAPM first because I don't have enough hours in
Okay.
project work because I worked in the medical field before, and I don't know that any of that I did there could translate into project work.
Okay. Have they helped you there with it?
What
Like,
yes.
Okay, good. So
Yeah. So,
okay. Good. So I knew your name looked familiar. I was like, okay, cool. So,
yeah.
thank you.
Another thing I want to clarify, Tanya, if I may, like, I know the persons have doubts because they don't have the title of project manager per se, but when you look at the definition of what is a project, that will help you to realize that everybody is a project manager. Everybody.
Yep.
Because a project is defined as any temporary endeavor that's unique, that produces a service, a product, or a result. So I look at it like this. Life is a project. It's unique to me. It's temporary because it has a start date and an end date. And every result is different. My life is not going to be the same as Tanya's life, and Lori's life is not going to be the same as ours. So I know a lady who put in an application for the PMP, and she used her divorce as her project.
I remember you saying that in the meeting, and I was tripping out. I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Would volunteer work be considered?
Yes, it is. It's a project. It has a start date and it has an end date. It's temporary. The only thing that defines a project from anything else is operations. Operations are ongoing. So if you're in manufacturing and you're producing the same product over and over and over, that's not a project. That's operations. That's the distinction. But everything you do is a project. Everything. So
that is a good way to think of it.
Don't think that because you don't have that title, that you cannot think of projects that you've actually ran that can qualify you and you could put on the PMP exam, because it doesn't have to be a 5-year continuous project. You just have to be able to use those mini projects or micro projects and use, like Tanya said, use the terminology that PMI would use and what they're looking for on that application. And two, I don't think there's a cost to put in that application. Tanya, is there a cost to put in the application? You don't pay to put in the application, right?
No, you don't pay. You don't pay until it's actually accepted and you schedule the exam. So
okay. Yeah. So I would say take some time, put the projects that you've actually ran together, and you can even go and hire somebody through Fiverr for about $20 and have them help you to put together an application.
So
And
even
Uh-huh.
integrating like an EMR system, like in a provider's office, like going from charts to like electronic medical records, that could be considered like project work.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. There's just even over the different careers too, there was somebody else that I had worked with in banking a long time ago that recently got in touch with me, and we were talking through it, and it was just, he didn't see himself in that way. And sometimes it takes somebody else spotlighting your experience. Like I said, even with the guy from CGI, that was my experience, because I don't know that I would have ever thought of myself in that direction, because I'm very much more of a creative type and wasn't seeing things like that. But yeah, moving the medical records is definitely a project. You'll have to plan how to do it. You've got to do the data migration to it. You've got to do the testing on it afterwards. There's a closeout phase to it to make sure that everything went according to plan. And then most likely you close it out and do the lessons learned. So definitely, like SAP, there's a lot of different projects. I mean, I know that they've got constantly ongoing projects all the time. So
Yes.
So yeah. But
I think that if anyone was to sit down and really think about the different projects that they run, even a teacher, because I know we have a university professor on the call. If you look at what you have to prepare and what you do in a typical semester, you could take a semester and you could break that out as a project, and you could define the actions that you take within that semester, and that would equate to your project hours on your application. You just have to think about it in those terminologies, because everything is a project. And two, when you think about where you are with your career and you have 5 years or more experience, why would you want to start at the CAPM, which is for like the foundational beginners, when you have the knowledge? You're studying the same book. The PIM book is the same textbook that's used for both exams. The only difference is you have to qualify to take the PMP exam, which they just want to prove that you have that real world life experience running projects. So you're studying the same material. You're paying for a foundational exam when you could just jump straight to the PMP. Find out if you fill out the application, find out if you're approved. If not, you may have to go through an audit, get some help, resubmit the application, and try again. Saba, you have a question?
And actually, it's not a question, but you kind of took the words out of my mouth. So, Lori, I would love for you to actually walk into a space where you have a different mindset, right? And I think this message was echoed by both Tanya and Andrea. Maybe you now think that you don't have enough qualifications or hours or whatever the case may be. And so you're kind of like going for the next step down. May I recommend that you start an Excel spreadsheet and start logging. Talk to your friends, reach out to the community, even talk to your boss, your peers, or whatever, because you'll be surprised how when you start brainstorming with others, what sort of like, what may be off your radar, where all of a sudden, it will become like a point of interest, and you can investigate it and add it to your log. And if you truly feel it doesn't belong there, it doesn't. But everything in life is a project, and you'll be surprised how much that really adds up. Like, don't lie about it, right? But like Andrea said, you're putting in the same amount of effort, whether you're going to go for your PMP or whether you're going to go for your CAPM. It's the same amount of effort. It's the same everything. My recommendations for you is reach for the stars And even if you end up kind of falling a little bit short, you can always pivot and go the other way, but give it a try. Go for it.
Maybe raising 3 kids, would that be considered a project?
That's a project. That's a program manager.
That's the whole thing. All right. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna go for it.
How long have you been at SCP?
A year in the IT department.
Okay.
As a project coordinator. Yep. Nick Ruiz actually is the one that told me to find you on LinkedIn.
Okay. I had seen he had looked at my LinkedIn profile. I was like, what's Nick doing? Because I knew his wife was a while back. I think his wife was gonna take the application, but it's been a while. It's been a while since I talked to him. I keep up with some of the people there. But
yeah, he's like, go to her LinkedIn, and I was like, okay.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate you making it tonight too. So all right.
Thank you, Lori. I think we have, what, 16 more minutes left. Does anyone else have any questions? I know some persons were just super quiet tonight, but this is your opportunity to learn and find out everything you need to know as we have the expert here.
Yeah, Tanya, like I said, I'll reach out on LinkedIn about the
ACP. Okay.
And then we can talk a little further later there.
Okay, that sounds good.
But thank you for everything, and have a good evening, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you, Emma. Okay. So has anybody already applied to take any of the certifications, or kind of at the stage gate? Or just starting?
I am definitely at the stage gate.
Okay, for which one? For the PMP or the CAPM?
CAPM.
Okay.
That would be the one that I would definitely go ahead and work towards.
Okay. And so that would probably be after the exam change, right? If the exam changes in a month, or?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay. Now, are any of you already members of PMI to where y'all could get the download of the book? Are y'all familiar with the site? Have y'all been on the site a lot? Okay. Do you find that
right now?
do you find that it's easy to navigate, to find the books and the standards and publications and all of that? Okay. They change it up a good bit. And I mean, even on our end, a lot of times when we go to submit PDUs for people, it'll be stuff has moved, but I hear it a lot that just people trying to find the information or knowing what they're looking for and going through it. But the membership really does open up, like even on Discipline Agile, there's different books on Discipline Agile that can be downloaded once you're a member of it. And so.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, we can end the call a few minutes early. I would just like to say to those of you who attended tonight, this is our first workshop, and I really appreciate Tanya offering her time to share her knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. And to also encourage you, if you're not already a member of the Project Management Institute, to join PMI. I have gained tremendously as a PMI member, and I recently joined the PMI Baton Rouge chapter that Tanya is the president of. And I must tell you, I have been enjoying attending those meetups that Tanya and her team put on, and not all are paid meetups. The majority of them, I noticed that they're free to attend once you're a chapter member. So, don't think of it as it's $139 to join PMI International, but then there's also an additional cost to join the chapters. And I think Tanya's chapter, it was like $25. I think it was $25. And I think I'm going to stay with PMI Baton Rouge for a good while because I'm gaining a lot from it. And also I'm a member of the PMI Chicagoland chapter, which is the biggest PMI chapter in North America. I think overall and globally,
Our
right?
next,
PMI.
our next speaker is going to be from Chicagoland, Tanya Roberts. I just sent out those communications today, but she's a member over there.
Yeah, I've already registered for that next event.
Okay.
So that's on my calendar.
Cool.
Another thing I would say is I am going to send out my calendar link for the first 10 persons that registered for this event to have a 30-minute additional consultation call with myself, and you can ask any questions you want about the CAPM, the PMP, or the PMI-ACP. I am certified in all of those, and I also pass each of them with above average scores on first attempt. So I can give you some additional tips on resources that I use to study, my study plan. I doubt you will go as hard as I do, because I'm like a bookworm. I'm a professional nerd. I love to learn. So I may kind of scare you with my regimen and how I study, but I just put in whatever it needs to take to get that success first time around. There's nothing wrong with trying again, like Tanya said, but I like to just put my all in and get the results that I'm looking for. So I will send out the email, and also I will send you the recording from tonight's workshop so that you can have it. It's not to be shared publicly because it was a paid event, and if persons wanted to have this information, they could have supported our paid workshop, which all proceeds are going to assist the Bahamas Agile and Project Management community, which I will do another plug since I have a few minutes. We have virtual monthly meetups that you can attend, and we offer PDUs and SEUs, which are Scrum Education Units. So if you're looking for a meetup that provides you with quality speakers, similar to what the PMI Baton Rouge chapter offers, we meet the last Thursday of every month. You can find us on Meetup, and you are given one PDU for the 1 hour for our meetup that you can apply to your PMI profile to recertify your credentials. And if you don't have any more questions, we can close the workshop and the session. And I would like to thank you again for joining us, and please stay in contact with Tanya and myself on LinkedIn and follow what's happening in the world of project management. You will be amazed at how much things we get done, because it's all because we are project managers and we have excellent time management. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank y'all for
All right,
joining.
thank you too.
Thank you.
Bye. It was nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you so much,
Thank
Tanya.
You're welcome. Y'all have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Tanya, and thank you, Andrea, for facilitating this. Very, very informative.
Thanks, Abba.
Thank you.
Bye.